more than
nice work if you can get it.
More than half his earnings. Right now, though, silence in court.
That's the unmistakable theme tune of daytime TV classic Crown Court, which when I was at university was a must for all students in order to avoid lectures. But in English and Welsh courts and Northern Irish courts, we will soon be hearing this.
On charge 6, the charge of murder, I sentence you, as I am required by law to do, to life imprisonment. I am also required to order that you serve a number of years as a punishment part of the sentence.
What's this? That's the very first televised verdict of a judge in Scotland. That came in 2015. Now, that's going to be allowed here soon, so it's going to be a case of lights, camera, action. Your Honour, you're on. TV cameras are to be allowed into criminal courts for the first time south of the border. To the horror of traditionalists, judges will be filmed delivering their verdicts. Sadly, for those who fancy watching real-life court dramas in full, the Beak's closing comments add up to a case of that's all, folks. We won't see the defendant, the jury, lawyers, courtroom staff, or any of the proceedings before the judge brings down the final curtain. But apart from a small step in the direction of modernisation, you wonder what's the point? I mean, could it actually be a bad idea? Because filming judges' verdicts, as well as in Scotland's civil and criminal appeals, has been legal in Scotland since 2015. And up there are calls to cut the cameras because critics say they are discouraging expert witnesses. Joining us now is our guest QC Chris Daw. Hello, Chris.
Afternoon, Matthew.
Afternoon, Chris. First question, Chris, really. This sounds like an okay thing for TV news bulletins and perhaps a slight bit of modernisation in the creaky old justice system. But hasn't our justice system and Crown Courts in particular got more important things to deal with, more important problems than whether or not TV cameras can come in?
I disagree. So I'm actually reporting live for you, Matthew, from outside the Crown Court, where I'm in the middle of a trial at the moment in a undisclosed location. So I'm right on top of this subject, and I disagree. I think we should have the cameras in more. I think sentencing is a really important part of the process, which obviously is what this new law is intended to allow to be televised. But one of my kind of big passions, and I'm doing some TV stuff and writing about it, is just to let people know what really goes on in the courts. Because I think 99% of members of the public have never been in a Crown Court or any form of criminal court, unless they've had the misfortune to be, charged with something, or be a witness, of course, or what have you, or be on jury service. But I think it's really important that the public understand what we do on the day.
I think Kevin was coming from the point that, isn't it something like half of Crown Courts stand empty due to lack of funding?
Yeah. Well, totally, yeah.
But we've got the money to put TV cameras in.
Well, I'm not sure who will pay for them. You and your colleagues in the media might pay for the cameras if they're going to install them. I can't imagine the court service is going to pay for cameras that are going to be used for media fees. Obviously they are. But no, I think open justice. I think having the public just see what we do, see where it happens. There's so much misinformation out there. I'll tell you this, Matthew. Also, I am one of the very few QCs in the country who's actually been filmed inside a Crown courtroom. And if you watch my series, which starts on BBC One on 27th of January, you'll see me in a Crown courtroom in my full regalia, talking about the system, showing the viewers around the courtroom. Unfortunately, because as the law stands, it's not allowed. That was in the evening when nobody was there. But people go to have a really good look at it. I think it's really important that people see what we do.
Now, some people, and you're the QC, so I'll leave it to you to explain. Some people will say, well, what about, we've had people like Tommy Robinson. He stood outside courts with a camera.
And the environs of the court.
And he ended up going down for it. So
that was a contempt.
Right. So perhaps you can explain why.
Right, because that was a criminal offence that he committed, because that was a case where there were trials due to take with a jury, and he was broadcasting about matters that were covered by a specific reporting restriction to prevent prejudice to that trial. What we're talking about here at the moment is the broadcasting of sentencing remarks, and that, of course, comes after the trial and after the jury's returned its verdict. So it's a completely different thing. But everybody that broadcasts against a contempt of court order risks going to prison, and that's what happened to Tommy Robinson. Rightly so, because he broke the law on purpose.
Absolutely. Chris, to return to your central point that transparency is no bad thing for any system, particularly our legal system. I mean, what light does it actually shine on everything about the process to just have the judge delivering the verdict?
You want more?
Yeah, I do. If you want this, surely you want more than just the judge's verdict.
That's what I was making. I agree with you. I mean, the sentencing is really important because there's so much misinformation out there. Every time you read about a sentence, the judges are all soft, the sentences are all too light. The truth is, Matthew, as you'll hear on my couple of weeks when I know you're going to watch it on BBC One, you will find out that sentences have actually doubled over the last sort of 15 to 20 years, and people are in prison for longer and longer. We've got more people in prison. So I think it's really important that people hear why judges are passing the sentence, how long they are, and the other part of the sentencing remarks, which perhaps people won't realise, because you played a fairly dry bit at the beginning here, but they'll hear the judge describe in detail the facts of the case, the true facts of the case, as given, as presented in court, rather than just a headline about a crazy nice criminal or something like that, which doesn't necessarily fully represent what's happened in the case. The more that people can understand, I mean, you know what I think, Matthew? Everybody, as part of some sort of, social program, everybody should go to court and watch a case one day. And I think people would have so much less to say about it.
Totally agree.
So much.
Totally agree.
And do you know what? It's free entertainment. What else can you get for free?
I used to go and sit in Croydon Crown Court and watch. And actually, when I was first interested in journalism, we were sent down to the local Crown Court. And
you're a wannabe barrister, Matthew.
Quite a few cases aren't that entertaining, to be honest with you, Chris.
It's quite interesting when you say I'm a wannabe barrister. Just looking ahead to this TV series, you've got Crime, Are We Tough Enough? And it's very interesting, isn't it, how our respective fields overlap. I note that I think it's you or your colleague are going to be talking, Aisha, your colleague, are going to be talking to Neil Woods, who's become something of a friend of this show, a former undercover drug squad officer, who said that when he retired from the force, he looked back on his career and recognised that he'd actually made the drugs problem worse, not better.
Well, he was on, and he was very passionate, and his belief that drugs should be legalised, decriminalised, which is one of my passions on the show as well. Aisha comes. It's a show where I'm presenting the case that we need to change things, do things differently. Aisha is saying we need to do the same, but in her opinion, we need to get tougher. In my opinion, we need to look at things in a totally different way. But we're exploring prisons, the police, drug policy, the courts, the whole lot, all in one series over a single week starting 27th of January, BBC One.
Could you, I'm sure it's something that's going to be, if not at the forefront, but certainly in your mind while you were making it. Can you explain why? And we heard this yesterday when we were talking about the success at HMP Liverpool. Why we're locking people up for longer, and the deterrent effect of jail seems to be diminishing in a sort of reciprocating measure. It just seems counterintuitive. So it's not working.
Because deterrence by means of imprisonment is the greatest myth in the criminal justice system. And I don't want to sound like a complete self-publicist, but I've got a book, and one of the in the book, which comes out in August, is why we should close all the prisons. And do
what instead? And I mean, I know you want people to buy the book, but.
So 70% of, I hear you're trying to get me to give away anything, but 70% of the people in prison are non-violent offenders. None of them should be in prison. If you have to keep people restricted, do it under house arrest. We've got the technology to do it. We've got, we've got things like fingerprint, facial recognition. People can be kept at home. They don't need to be locked up in a cell, being exposed to drugs and being exposed to more sophisticated criminals if they're non-violent. And there's a tiny number of prisoners who are seriously violent and dangerous to the public, and they need to be in secure conditions. But even they will eventually be released. So you have to be doing something that is planning not for the first day of their sentence, but the first day of their release, to make sure that they're in a fit state to come back into society and minimise the risk that they're going to do something wrong when they do. So totally different approach. They do it much better in Norway, in all the Scandinavian countries. They don't have people locked up in barred cells, pie, razor wire, etc. It's just not the way to reduce crime. It never does. The most draconian system on earth is the United States prison system with 2.5 million people, and they have the highest rates of almost every category of crime because prison doesn't work.
They have 2.5 million people in prison.
2.5 million Americans are in prison. If you think about it, so that would make it the 5th largest city in the United States.
Dear God.
The city of incarceration is what I call it in my book. That's out in August, Justice on File.
What is this, an advert?
You had me on, Matthew.
I don't mind buying into a product that gives great returns, and I think with Chris Daw from Sergeant's Inn, you get that. Chris, lovely speaking to you, my friend. And perhaps when the TV show comes out or the book comes out, you could grace us with your presence. That's Chris Daw, well worth following on Twitter. You're listening to Talk Radio
on DAB Digital Radio.